If you thought that tape-playing instruments started and ended with the mellotron, think again. Because the entire concept was actually devised by a Wisconsin-based inventor, Harry Chamberlin, as long ago as the late 1940s. Now, the word genius is bandied around the musical instrument industry like confetti at a Mooney's wedding, but Harry Chamberlin really was a bona fide genius. His early inventions benefited a number of industries and included things like the car windshield washer, which sadly he didn't patent, and an insulating machine that allowed one man to insulate an entire building. In World War II, Harry even helped design the electrical system of the Boeing B-29. However, it was after the war in 1949, when Harry recorded himself playing an organ, that he hit upon the idea of a tape-based musical instrument. The initial question was, if I can put my finger on a note and get an organ sound, then why can't I get a real guitar or violin sound? The tape recorder was the catalyst for this eureka moment, and he set to work in his basement, quickly finding that a crude prototype did indeed work. And over the next few years he spent time refining and re-engineering this idea. The idea was simple. Record a series of single notes or a collection of musical motifs or rhythms and place them onto tapes, each one triggered via a piano-style keyboard. It worked, and Harry developed a system whereby each time the player depressed a key, a pressure pad pinched the tape onto a rotating shaft, which in turn caused the tape to be pulled across a tape head. The pre-recorded sound then played for the length of the tape, usually 8 seconds, after which the player released the note and the tape was then rewound by a second motor, or in the case of very early Chamberlins by a spring, before being ready to be played again. The Chamberlin musical instrument and everything that followed it was born. And over the next few years, Harry's work extended to keyboards designed around this vision, as well as drum machines that incorporated tape loop patterns. These drum machines were called Rhythmates, and in some cases featured drum playing from his son Richard. At GForce, we've had an enduring love affair with the Chamberlin sound, joining a wealth of users who've utilised this sound over the years, and these artists are incredibly diverse and include Stevie Wonder, James Taylor, David Bowie, Mitchell Froom, Gino Vanelli, Edgar Winter, The Moody Blues, Elton John, XTC, Three Dog Night, The Letterman, Patrick Warren, Tom Waits, Kanye West and John Bryan, and that's just a small selection. In fact, our love affair with Chamberlin instruments is probably more an obsession, and over the years we've curated a sublime collection of Chamberlin instruments, ranging from some very rare keyboards to several Chamberlin Rhythmate drum machines. The GForce Chamberlin expansion pack for M-Tron Pro focuses mainly on the sounds from the keyboards. In particular, our extremely rare 4-manual Chamberlin M4 and a one-off M1 remote with a custom MIDI interface. It's important to note that with this expansion pack, all of the sounds are taken from instruments we own, maintain and love. None of these sounds have been licensed from another company, who in turn has licensed the sounds to another company, etc, etc. These are all derived from our own highly prized instruments, and that's what helps make this a unique collection and set it apart from everything else out there. So let's have a look at the instruments involved. Our Chamberlin M4 is one of only 4 produced. It cost over $10,000 when new and was originally owned by Three Dog Night, who toured with it during the 70s, despite the fact it weighs close to 300 kilos. The M4 was the flagship of the Chamberlin M series range, and it consists of 4 manuals, each with 12 tape banks. That's 48 total tape banks, and with 1 piece of tape per key, that's 120 individual pieces of tape and a staggering 1,440 tracks. We've already said that our M4 was owned by Three Dog Night, but other M4 owners included Mike Pinder, Mitchell Froom and The Letterman. And given its rarity and flagship status, it will come as no surprise that we've spent a small fortune on it over the years. firstly restoring it properly and subsequently maintaining it. The 4 keyboards are split into 2 left and 2 right manuals. The left-hand manuals have 25 notes, whereas the right-hand manuals have the full range of 35 notes. If we look at one of the 25-note left-hand manuals, you'll see that this runs from C to C, as opposed to the G to F of the right manual. The 35 M-Tron Pro keys range from G to F, as did the Mellotron and as does the right-hand manual of the M4. Therefore, in the Chamberlin expansion pack for M-Tron Pro, in order to keep everything uniform, we will have pitched the very top and the very bottom notes up and down so as to match the right-hand manual and M-Tron Pro key range. The way the M4 sound selection worked is fascinating, in that for each selection you effectively had 2 sounds under your fingers via a stereo tape head. Here you can see that both vibes and piano are selected, and using the volume knob we could have one, other, or both play it every time we hit a note. Now the cool thing with this expansion pack is that you can faithfully recreate this with the 2 layers on the M-Tron Pro. However, with the M-Tron Pro you're not limited to the sounds predetermined by the position of the tape tracks as with the M4. You can have any sound from any of the Tron library. After all, who really thought that playing doo-wah, trombone and sound effects simultaneously was such a good idea? According to a reliable source, there were 6 M1 remotes made, and ours is one of 3 surviving. Now that in itself makes it rare enough, but it gets better, and we'll get to why in a moment. However, in the interim, to the best of our knowledge, the M1 remote was designed to add another set of sounds to an original M1 keyboard. You would simply take an M1, put it on top of the remote, hook it up, and via a switching mechanism you'd have control over 4 sounds at any given time. 2 from the M1 and 2 from the remote. We also have it on good authority that the remote was also designed as an add-on for things like Hammond organs, and while this is certainly plausible, we're not sure if it holds any real weight. Our M1 is different though. In fact, we're pretty convinced that it's unique, in that it has a custom-made MIDI interface, and as such can be triggered by any MIDI device. It's with this that things get pretty mental though, and in this flight case we have an array of relays, each linked to a MIDI note number. When we play our note on a MIDI keyboard, the relay responds and fires a solenoid on the M1 remote. This in turn pulls a piece of string and causes the motor to drag the tape across the head. Rube Goldberg, eat your heart out. The M1 remote comes with 8 sounds of cello, 3 violins, which incidentally is the only Chamberlin sound to make it to the Mellotron library, trumpet, trombone, vibes, alto and tenor sax, and flute. Now, one of the reasons we've included these sounds in the expansion pack, in addition to those already taken from the M4, is because one of the wonders of tape-based instruments is the way that the sound varies from instrument to instrument, and this is due to things like tape wear and the way the machines are set up, etc. Even though the source recordings are the same, the M4 and M1 sounds are slightly different, and in our opinion, that's what gives an instrument character. The final instrument we've used in creating this expansion pack is an amazingly rare Rhythmate 25. I mentioned the Rhythmates previously, and I'm sure you're thinking, yeah, but what has a drum machine got to do with a keyboard-based expansion pack? Well, I'll tell you in a second. We have 3 Rhythmates, a Model 20, a Model 25, and a Model 35. The 25 and 35 are essentially the same machines, but whereas the 35 is built into a beautiful sounding valve amplifier as seen here, the 25 is a standalone unit. When we purchased our 25, it also came with a spare tape. And if you look at the insides of a 25, you'll see it is a looped 1-inch tape over which you move the playhead to select the different rhythms. Now these rhythms are fantastic in themselves, but that's for another day. Our inquisitive nature forced us to change the drum one in favour of the variety one almost immediately we noticed it. And consequently, we were blown away by the sound effects that emanated from this new tape. It is instant vintage Americana, with trains and whistles and boats and foghorns. And these are totally different sounds to that on the effects bank of the M4. So for this collection, we decided to augment the M4's 25 notes of sound effects with another 10 from the Rhythmate 25 variety tape. Now, in correspondence with Harry's son Richard, he knows of only one other person with a Rhythmate 25, the brilliantly gifted Patrick Warren. However, he knows of no other tapes that exist, which makes the Chamberlin expansion pack for M-Tron Pro utterly unique. So that's our trip through a few of our Chamberlin instruments, and we hope it's whet your appetite for the add-on pack. You will already need to own a registered copy of M-Tron Pro in order to purchase this, but if you do, we think it is a must-have add-on. As we said before, maintaining our Chamberlin collection is a labour of love, and as such we've spared no expense in creating this add-on pack. Taking over a year to compile and produce, we think you'll agree the results are well worth it. Oh, and if you wanted to know why we wanted these sounds in software, as opposed to firing up the Chamberlins every time we wanted those sounds, the answer is simple.
So we don't have to put up with the noise of 4 motors.